Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We do have people rolling into the space right now. We're really excited to be talking with you. My name is Lisa Butler. I will be your moderator today, and we've got a jam-packed program, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So once again, this is the adoption of the Delta Mendota Subbasin Single Groundwater Sustainability Plan. And I am here with some luminaries from the Delta Mendota region who will be talking to you about their subbasin today. We also have today some Spanish translation available if you would like it. So with that, I'll turn this over to the interpreters to give you some additional information about that.
Thank you. Sí, hola, buenos días a todos, bienvenidos. Vamos a estar proveyendo a interpretación para su reunión de hoy, la sostenibilidad del agua subterránea de la subcuenca Delta Mendota. Y para acceder a los servicios de interpretación al español, les voy a dar unas instrucciones. Si está conectado desde computadora o tableta, van a ver el icono de El Mundo en la parte inferior de su pantalla que dice interpretación. Va a seleccionar su idioma de preferencia, que en este caso es español, y luego le va a dar clic a silenciar el audio original. Y si está usando teléfono, tableta o iPad, va a haber tres puntitos en la parte inferior. Y el mismo proceso va a seleccionar la interpretación al español. Luego va a silenciar a su audio original y le va a hacer done o finalizado y habrá completado la configuración de interpretación en Zoom. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. And we'll be clicking that in just a minute.
Yes, please. No worries.
Okay. Let's see, we've got people pulled in. All right. With that, I am going to, John Brody, are you able to pull up your slides?
Let me,
Lisa, so sorry
Yes.
to interrupt. It hasn't been turned on yet.
Yes, that's
so
right. I have to get out of this screen to do that. So
Thank you. I want to make sure nobody misses anything.
great. Thank you so much. So as soon as we're able to pull up that I'll be able to get to the interpretation. There we go. And interpretation is started. Okay. John, do you want me to pull mine back up or you've got
yeah,
it?
if you can do that, please.
Happy to do that. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. We're very excited to have the interpretation available for everyone to be able to participate as full as possible in this process. From the beginning. Here we go. People coming in. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn this over to John Brody. So go ahead and introduce yourself, John, and set us up for our conversation today.
Yeah, sure. So good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us. As Lisa shared, I'm John Brody. I'm also the plan manager for the Delta Mendota Subbasin. My role is to assist the 23 Groundwater Sustainability Agencies, or GSAs, with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA for short, and the compliance with that. There's the map on the screen that shows you the Delta Mendota is a large, complex subbasin that stretches from nearly the Delta all the way to Fresno or thereabouts. The colored map up in the corner gives you an indication of the different GSAs for this vast landscape. Today, you'll hear about the journey these GSAs have been on to create a plan for sustainably managing groundwater and eliminating the need for state intervention in this subbasin. So during this webinar, you'll meet two of the leaders who have been a critical part of the plan's development. And I'm pleased to introduce the first one to you. He's the general manager of the San Luis Canal Company and Henry Miller Reclamation District, number 2131, Mr. John Wiersma.
Thank you. John, take it away.
All right. Thank you, John, for that kind introduction, and Lisa for setting up all those logistics. A lot goes into the webinar, so really appreciate you guys doing that. So wanted to start off with giving everybody kind of an overview of the agenda and what we wanted to accomplish today. I'm going to kind of hit things from a higher level, and then at some point here, I'll turn it over to John and Vince to get into the GSP itself a little bit more. So first and foremost, we want to go over what we want you guys to take away today, the purpose of the meeting, and some key takeaways that we want our key stakeholders to take from the meeting today. We want to go over a little bit about where we've been and where we're headed, mainly from a process standpoint and an administrative standpoint. And then, as I said, we're going to get into the GSP itself a little bit more, review our sustainability and how we're going to measure that sustainability. And then also the project and management actions that go along with our GSP, as I'm sure that most everybody on the call is very interested on what we're planning to actually do. And then maybe most importantly, we want to key you guys in on next steps and how you can stay involved in the process as we move forward. So having said that, the purpose of the meeting today, first and foremost, we want the various stakeholders within our Delta Mendota subbasin to understand our GSP. We have environmental stakeholders, ag, municipal water. We have all of the above. And so we want everybody to have a firm, good understanding of what this new GSP accomplishes and what we're trying to get done here. Also, we have a strong commitment to public involvement, public engagement, public comments. I think this is our third webinar that we're having now. We want to do what we can to really reach out as much as we can to everybody in the subbasin. So that's been a key driver for us and something that's very important. And we're going to keep on with that now and into the future. And then we also want to get into the actual updates that we've made in this GSP and how we've addressed the comments and the concerns of the regulatory agencies. And equally as important, the comments and concerns of the 23 GSAs that actually need to administer this plan and carry things out. And then last, but definitely not least, we want to go over our plan for implementation. Maybe the way that I would say this is our plan has been put together and drafted. So we've kind of talked the talk, so to speak. Now we need to walk the walk. And so we're going to go over a little bit exactly on how we plan to get that done.
Great. Thanks so much. If you've just joined us, Spanish translation is available. And if you need that, please just drop a note in the chat.
Yep. Thank you for that, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit about where we've been. For those of you who know Sigma, you know there's nothing brief about Sigma, but I'll give you a brief overview. In 17 is when the 23 GSAs were formed. In 2020, that was essentially when we worked on our first GSP, which actually was 6 GSPs. Right out the gate, we decided to go with 6 GSPs, and mainly you heard John Brody talk to the complexity of our subbasin. We had very specific reasons for doing that, which we'll get into a little bit later. In January of 2022, we were deemed incomplete by DWR and had a list of items to address. We did address those concerns from DWR, and we resubmitted in June of 2022. And I guess as the next slide says that
I also wanted to point out that time did not fly. This thing was brutal. All right.
Yep. A lot of work went into it. So 2023 was essentially the March 2023, the moment of truth for us. And regrettably, if you will, we were determined inadequate by DWR. And again, we had a number of comments that DWR brought up. And without getting into all the details of the deficiencies of the comments, I would say the overarching comment our concern was a lack of coordination. Again, I talked about 6 GSPs. There was a lack of coordination that was noted, maybe inconsistent sustainable management criteria. Essentially, it was just hard to get 6 plans talking the same language. And so at the Delta Mendota subbasin, we took that feedback to heart. We really wanted to address it. So in about July of 2023, we made a big commitment. It was an inflection point, a turning point. We decided in July to move forward and scrap the 6 GSP approach and put together 1 GSP. It was a big, huge undertaking, and that does not do it justice at all. To give you guys a feel, we had to agree and get 1 consultant on board. We had to scrap the existing coordination agreement that we had and put together a new agreement to allow us to operate under 1 GSP, and we had to put the GSP together in this time frame. And so it was a huge undertaking, and I want to thank my partners in the Delta Mendota subbasin, the coordination committee. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, tough conversations, tough decisions went into making this happen. And again, we had a goal of submitting an updated GSP in 1 year from July of 2023, and we did exactly that. We submitted our new GSP in July of 2024 to the State Water Resources Control Board. So big accomplishment, a lot of work that went into it. So let me take a step back here, though, and talk a little bit about the time frame, the timing that we set, and why we set the timeline the way that we did. To our understanding, the hearing, our probationary hearing, is scheduled for March of 2025, or the end of Q1. The state board staff will release a draft staff report in preparation for that hearing that we understand will be, distributed about November of 2024 this year. So it was our goal to make sure that we resubmitted this GSP in plenty of time for the state board staff to review this plan and incorporate comments and analysis on this plan in their draft staff report. So again, it was really important that we met our timelines, because again, it's our intent and our ask of the state board to review this new plan that we put together. And so we needed to hit the mark here from a timing standpoint, and we did exactly that. I think the last thing that I would point out on that timeline is I did reference our commitment to public engagement and involving the public. Proud to report that we did start our public review period in April of this year. We wanted to get certain chapters out. We want to get information out as soon as we could, as soon as we had it, to allow ample time for the public to comment and review. And so I think we met the mark there and exceeded the requirements for public comment periods. So I just wanted to share that with the group. So that's I think that covers where we were, where we are, and our plans of where we're headed. I'd like to shift the conversation now to the actual GSP itself. And again, I'm going to hit a couple high-level notes here, so to speak. And then I think for the rest of the webinar, we're going to dig into more of the details. But that's where I'm going to turn it over to people that are much smarter than me. So from a high level, a couple things that the GSP does. It meets the statutory requirements as far as we're concerned. It provides sustainable subbasin groundwater management. It avoids undesirable results. It addresses the deficiencies and the comments that we have received thus far from the regulating agencies to the best of our ability and our understanding. It does much more than that. I think there's a much bigger story here, and a lot of really cool things that happened. So again, I talked about how complex our subbasin is. The collaboration that was required to put this GSP together, the tough decisions that we had to make and the tough conversations that we had to have. We made a commitment in here that we're going to get to in a little bit to address overdraft in our subbasin. We agreed to and came up with one of our management actions, being that in the event that we hit an MT and we have not addressed the issue.
What is an MT?
Thank you, Lisa. A measurable threshold. So if we hit basically a limit that is in our GSP, we've agreed to back the issue with a groundwater allocation. That is a tough conversation. It's a tough thing to do, but I'm very proud that the GSAs in our subbasin have agreed to do that, and we've committed to do that in our GSP. So that's a big commitment, a big step to basically commit to groundwater allocations as a backstop. So that's just one example. We have a number of examples of really cool but tough things that are coming out of this GSP. We've established some of the most progressive, methodical thresholds in the state. And maybe arguably most important, and especially to probably a lot of people on this call, we have drafted this GSP to not only be protective of our communities, but we've drafted this with our partners sitting at the table right next to us. The commitments that we made here, mainly to maintaining 2015 water levels, are protective of the groundwater supplies and any of the communities that are reliant on groundwater pumping. And so we're really proud of that. And that was a goal that we had set to make sure that we were protective of all of our communities within the subbasin. We've addressed subsidence aggressively here with some tangible measures. And maybe last, but definitely not least, from the GSA side, we were able to retain our autonomy as a subbasin. Generally, the reason that we had 6 subbasins is because that we're very different, and a one-size-fits-all approach in one part of the basin does not necessarily work for other parts of the basin. And so, again, I think this is a nod of the head and a testament to how collaboratively we were able to work to put one succinct plan together, but also allowed us the ability to manage water the way that we needed to within the subbasin. So again, a lot more to that story. That's kind of a high-level overview. And at this point, I am going to turn it over to John Brody, and he is going to go into a little bit more details of our actual GSP and some of the really cool things that we're doing. Mr. Brody.
All right, thank you, John. So the first step to address a challenge is to identify a goal. And so we have here this reaching sustainability being the challenge. So here's the goal for the subbasin. This goal provides a specific picture for how groundwater sustainability will look in the Delta Mendota subbasin. And with that goal or destination in mind, the GSAs began creating the map that will take us to that sustainability destination. And that map is the Groundwater Sustainability Plan. So next slide, please, Lisa. So here we have the Sustainable Management Criteria, or SMCs. These are the specific measurements that will track our progress and define our success. A minimum threshold, or MT, is the bottom line. If we don't maintain at least the minimums, we know more work must be done. Undesirable results are defined in the law, and they're explained a little bit more on the next slide. So allowing undesirable results will likely result in state intervention. GSAs are committed to avoiding any undesirable results, which can have a negative effect on our friends and neighbors who are the beneficial users of groundwater. And so we want to make sure that we don't have any impacts on any of the beneficial users of groundwater here in the subbasin. Next slide, please. So the GSP lists the subbasin's measurable objectives, or MOs, which are the indications of our success. And when paired with the MTs that we discussed previously, we can track where we are having successes and where additional action may be needed. So this GSP is designed to achieve groundwater sustainability, which is a net balance between extraction and recharge by 2040. Interim milestones are set every 5 years to measure the progress towards sustainability goal. And at all times, the basin is managed for our beneficial uses and users. These are the people and the entities that depend on sustainable groundwater management for personal, business, nature, and wildlife needs, taking all of those into consideration. So reaching a net balance between extractions and recharge means finding a sustainable yield. And based on a sophisticated model that is adjusted specifically to the Delta Mendota subbasin, the sustainable yield is estimated at approximately 308,000 acre-feet per year. This slide illustrates how everything we've covered in the past few slides fits together. So if you recall from Mr. Wiersma's presentation, 6 GSPs were adopted in 2020. Those plans identified minimum thresholds and set interim milestones. As we told you earlier, those interim milestones are set every 5 years until 2040, when groundwater sustainability is achieved under this plan. So to tell you how this new single GSP will protect all these sustainability indicators in the subbasin, I'll introduce you to the General Manager of Patterson Irrigation District, Vince Lucchese.
Hi, my name is Vince Lucchese. I'm the General Manager of Patterson Irrigation District. Like John Wiersma, I sit on the Coordination Committee of the Delta Mendota Subbasin, and I represent the northern area of the Delta Mendota Subbasin. I'm going to be covering quickly at a high level for this presentation, a general overview of the SMCs, the projects of management actions, our well mitigation policy, and what we call our pumping reduction plans and the related policies associated with that. I want to emphasize that when I'm going to talk first is about the SMCs, and then we're going to lead into these various items, but keep in mind that we have measures that we are putting in place to be protective of this valuable resource. So starting off, we're going to talk about water quality, the SMC for water quality. I'm going to quickly skip right to MTs. So the MT that we have established for our representative monitoring network for the Delta Mendota Subbasin is at the MCL of the following constituents: TDS, nitrates, arsenic, 1,2,3 TCP, gross alpha, and chrome 6. However, some of the wells that we have already have a history of being above those MCLs, then which, if that well has already exceeded it, we have created a baseline. When I say that well has already exceeded it, it's been exceeding it prior to 2015. So we create the baseline, which is the average measured concentration. To establish a baseline, we will use the average annual concentration of the last year data pre-Sigma, or if that's not available, the first year post-Sigma. Since concentrations can fluctuate within a year, we add the maximum annual range to that average to get the baseline concentration. Moving on, we established the measurable, Lisa, go back to the slide.
Yeah.
Moving on to the MO, we have set the MO as the MO set as the MT. And then finally, the unreasonable results are established at an exceedance of a measurable threshold in 15% of the represented monitoring wells for water quality for 3 consecutive years caused by groundwater recharge or extraction within the subbasement. This requirement of 15% threshold be met for 3 years prior to triggering an unreasonable result is in recognition of the fact that 3 years of data are needed to define a trend and assess whether the observed impacts are a result of pumping or recharge and avoid triggering an undesirable result as a result of short-term fluctuations. Finally, any new exceedance, regardless of whether an unreasonable result is triggered, will be evaluated in accordance with the MT exceedance policy, which I will be discussing further on in this presentation, which will be incorporated into the new GSP.
So basically what you're saying is that you've got a strong list of pollutants, contaminants that's pretty robust. You've set, when the law passed 2015 and said, okay, going forward, if 15% of our wells are the ones that we're monitoring are having problems with this 3 years in a row, then that's an undesirable result, and we will take additional action. Is that right?
So the idea is that is an undesirable result, but we will be evaluating each location. That's why I emphasized on the well mitigation and pumping reduction policies that we're going to be establishing. We will be evaluating each representative monitoring well on a per well basis, and that's where we're going to evaluate on a trend evaluation if the exceedances are occurring, and we'll be evaluating those on a per site basis to prevent us to ever reach this 15% threshold.
Great. Thanks for explaining that. I know water quality is a big concern for people.
It is.
What about subsidence?
Okay, let's have fun. All right, subsidence. All right, subsidence. So we have established by 2040, from the period of 2020 through 2040, allowed a 2-foot cumulative subsidence. However, this 2-foot limit was based upon the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation design standards for the Delta Mendota Canal Subsidence Correction Project. So we've established a graduated approach when it comes to subsidence, being for the period of 2020 to 2025, we would allow a 1-foot increase of subsidence. Then we would allow a half a foot between 2025 through 2030, then a quarter of a foot between 2030 and 2035, and then another quarter of a foot between 2035 and 2040, and no subsidence beyond that. The MT is the rate that spans between those periods of time on the allowance. So for the period between 2020 and 2025, that 1 foot, that roughly translates of a 0.2 of a foot per year of subsidence as a moving average, 5-year moving average. What that means is when we come to implementation and management, if we start seeing that the trend of the 2.2 feet per year is being exceeded, we start implementing our own policies and management actions beyond what we've already planned on, such as pumping reduction and evaluating how much pumping we need to reduce based upon that location. We have a series of representative monitoring sites that are across the subbasin. A lot of them are based on critical infrastructure, such as the California Aqueduct and the Delta Mendota Canal, and the headworks of the facilities being fed off the Mendota Pool.
Great. And no subsidence after 2040.
Yes, that's very important. Lisa, you can move on to the next slide. Okay, moving on to the next SMC is the Interconnected Surface Water SMC. This is one we've identified as a data gap for the Delta Mendota subbasin. However, we have established the current MT as the model estimated depletion rate of what's identified here as 14,461 acre feet per year. That is, the model produced that in the depletion of summer and fall of 2014, caused by pumping within the subbasin. So that's our minimum threshold. Our measurable objective is the model estimated historical average of water year 2003 through 2018 depletion caused by pumping within the basin at 6,792 acre feet. This is a data gap of which we are working on filling as we're on this presentation. Now we have monitoring wells being installed along the San Joaquin River, which is the primary water body that is considered for surface water, interconnected surface water SMC. We have various tributary streams that are also being considered as part of the interconnected surface water. However, the San Joaquin River is our primary concern of depletion. So we will we revise our model and refine it based upon more data that comes from these monitoring wells. Moving on, reduction in groundwater storage. So I'm going to be folding with groundwater storage also water levels. These two are hand in hand SMCs. The MT for the reduction in groundwater storage is based on 2015 level season low. That is our MT. Our MO is 2015 seasonal high. Our undesirable result, as you can see, is a 10% reduction in overall. It's a 10% reduction in usable groundwater in our subbasin. What we will be managing to is on each representative monitoring sites to ensure that they do not exceed the 2015 low. We will be monitoring and we will be performing monitoring. I believe it's quarterly unless another agency has tightened up their monitoring to be monthly. That monitoring will help give us a determination if we look like we're going to start having an exceedance. The idea is to be proactive rather than reactive in managing groundwater levels and groundwater storage. In groundwater, okay, I see a note here, Thomas. It'd be nice.
Yeah, we just water people are terrible about acronyms.
All the time.
I just want to do shout out. We are the worst. So
I do apologize. I've been living and breathing this stuff since 2017. So 7 years of my life has been dedicated to this.
It's a whole nother language. So thank you to the person that wrote that.
Yes.
Note. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep going.
Yeah, I want to expand on a little bit here with undesirable results. The undesirable results, as you can see, 10% reduction in groundwater, that was developed and defined through this evaluation of these. The potential of 25% of the representative monitoring wells are at their minimum threshold, or more than 10 drinking wells are dry in a single year. This is in a single year. One of these two alternatives could have happened. And finally, more than 170 drinking wells are dry by 2040. That is in our plan. That is what we're using to define our undesirable result by 10% reduction. That's how we created that threshold. All right, Lisa.
So, Vince, you've just laid out a whole bunch of stuff that sounds awful. What are we gonna do about it? What are you gonna do to fix all this stuff?
All right, hold on. So, projects and management actions. We created as a subbasin a massive list of projects we're going to do. The big thing is we started when we evaluated our water budget shortfall. We first applied the water supply augmentation projects such as recharge, recycled water, stormwater recapture, or stormwater capture, I should say, construction of new surface water storage projects, and modifying water budgets and creating relationships through water transfers, exchanges, and purchases. After we evaluated that, we determined whether or not we had any additional overdraft. That's where the pumping reduction comes into play, because we still have a shortfall even if we implemented all our water supply augmentation projects. So the pumping reduction plan is a series of policies that we'll be discussing further on in this presentation. The idea is to prevent any MT exceedances or undesirable results by having these backstops and measures in place. All right, Lisa, thank you. As you can see, here's the map of our subbasin. On the bottom left is the upper aquifer. We and the Delta Mendota subbasin have two primary aquifers that are pumped from. One is, and the confining layer that separates those two is called the pork grain clay. It's a very thick layer of clay that's almost impermeable, and the two water supplies are separated by that. So when we refer to upper aquifer and lower aquifer, it's bound by the pork grain clay. As you can see, in the upper, it spans the whole subbasin, and then the lower aquifer, you can see how it spans the whole subbasin as well. There are 110 water level representative monitoring sites, 91 water quality sites, 35 land subsidence sites, along with, as we monitor land subsidence, we will be relying on INSAR monitoring to help us out. And then we have 25 interconnected surface water representative monitoring sites. As I mentioned before, we are filling that data gap. The region that we're referring to, as you can see on the upper aquifer map, you can see WSID plan, that's West Stanislaus Irrigation District. You can see ISW2 planned. You can see there's a series of wells along the San Joaquin there that's bounded on the right side of this map, that where the interconnected surface waters are going. The surface water monitoring wells are going. Lisa, you can move on to the next slide. All right, here's the fun one, the well mitigation program. This is a labor of love for everybody in our coordination committee to develop. This, as you can see, we have a series of bullets here, but ultimately what it is a program that we have set in place to have protective measures for domestic wells going dry. It would be a measure to put in place as wells going dry or impacts due to the actions taken on by the subbasin or member agencies that impact people, individuals' drinking water supply. Well mitigation plan is funded by all 7 of the coordination committee membership groups to meet, and the funding is set at $300,000, and that funding it will be maintained by the member agencies. It will act as a fund for everybody to draw from to cover the costs of the replacement of wells. We have a outreach strategy that is included in the plan that we will be reaching out to all folks to identify and notify them that the well mitigation policy is in effect and how to access the funds, or how to access an evaluation whether you've been impacted by actions by the Delta Mendota subbasin. The policy is very elaborate, and we also, one thing I want to emphasize, that well users applying for well mitigation will receive an emergency water supply within 2 business days after we have a sufficient application that met the requirements to provide the water supply to them. The extent of the repairs and replacements we do for the well, it's as broad as it needs to be to make sure that we replace that well as needed. I'm moving on, Lisa. All right, so this is just an informative slide of our water balance budget by 2040. You can see that the water budget in this exhibit starts roughly about 2024, and you see the actions that we are taking. As one thing you can see is the adaptive management and pumping reduction as the red bars on this graph. Those, again, are the backstops and the reduction plans and mitigation policies that we will have in place to ensure that we are sustainable by 2040. So, pumping reduction framework. This is something I touched on earlier on in the presentation. The pumping reduction framework includes 6 policies that the 7 member agencies of the 7 member groups of the coordination committee are set to adopt. The first policy is the monitoring data collection policy. Is each group needs to have a plan that complies with has a policy that complies with our plan to ensure success. The next item is the overdraft mitigation policy. There you see that in that bullet, GSAs will collectively reduce total pumping by at least 42,000 acre feet per year. The majority of that is under that's pumping that is below the Corcoran clay, so we have to reduce that pumping. Incremental reduction in overdraft, but from 20% by 2026 to 100% by 2030. That it is a graduated approach, meaning that we will have reduced pumping by 20% by 2026 and then to 100% by 2030 of that 42,000 acre feet per year. Each group has taken a different strategy on how they are going to implement their share of that sub-Corcoran shortfall. The next one, groundwater level empty avoidance policy. This is a policy that is proactive rather than reactive when it comes to water level decline. What the idea is that as we are monitoring our representative monitoring sites, we will evaluate whether we start seeing a trend that the well has the potential to exceed its minimum threshold. And then we set measures in place to protect water levels to not hit MT, the minimum threshold. The idea is to reduce pumping within a certain range, certain radius surrounding that location, so to prevent hitting that MT. At least the next one, yes. Oh, well, the water quality exceedance policy that follows similar to the water level MT exceedance policy with what we're gonna the things we can manage is pumping and water level water recharge, groundwater recharge, and water augmentation. So the idea is to monitor water quality, and if our actions are causing that, reduced pumping, modify the way we're recharging, etc. Moving on, subsidence mitigation policy. Like I mentioned in the earlier slides regarding subsidence, we have a rate that we have allowed for subsidence up to the maximum 2 feet. That is the graduated approach to 2040. We have a 3-year moving average rate of subsidence. If you have exceeded subsidence at a rate larger than 0.2 feet per year on a 3-year moving average, actions need to be put in place to reduce pumping to, looks like 0.25 acre feet per acre within the zone of influence of that representative monitoring location. The final thing is, if these policies are not effective, we have all committed to a groundwater allocation backstop to prevent the exceedances of our minimum thresholds. The idea is, depending on where we are at on the water budget from the annual reports and monitoring, that will tell us how much water you have to reduce by. Okay, pumping reduction framework timeline. I'll go over this quickly. We have set to adopt the GSP last month in July 2024. We are developing the implementation plan now as we speak, with the plan of the policies being set in place by October 24. And the idea is those policies will be in effect January 2025. And then by 2030, we will have the 42,000 acre foot pumping reduction set.
That's great. I think the next set of slides, you're going to be really just kind of laying in. It's like, we know this is going to work. You're actually proving that you can be sustainable.
So we show proof of sustainability. Multiple lines, like, as you can see, of evidence demonstrate that GSA is a credible plan to achieve sustainability with the project and management actions glide path, demonstration of our undesirable results, and demonstration that overdraft will be eliminated. You can see through the water budget slide that at the beginning of this this group of slides, showing how we're implementing the pumping reduction plan, how we're applying our various projects and management actions. Those are calendar-based items that we are doing. Moving on to projects and management actions, glide path, and sensitivity analysis. We did a series of tests on our plan to assure that we are going to achieve sustainability. We looked at historical plus current water budget periods. Water balance periods, I should say. Historical plus current water balance periods only achieving 50% of our project and management action benefits. How we're going to address that. As you can see, the average annual overdraft, 140,000 acre feet. Adaptive management covering the remaining deficit. We looked at the 2070 extreme dry scenario, worst case scenario, and we also looked at the 2070 extreme wet scenario. We created a sensitivity analysis across the subbasin to assure that we are going to achieve sustainability. Modeling of projects and management actions. You can see we have projects that we have identified by these various symbols here, the star being tier 1 implemented by 2025, tier 2 being the triangle implemented by 2030, the red square implemented by 2040, and tier 4 implemented as needed. We directly input all of the project management actions, again, by a calendar basis, and then we set a constant head boundary to reflect adjacent basins achieving sustainability by 2040. Again, these projects management actions, these are where they're located and how it benefits the entire subbasin, is because they're not located at one specific spot. They are across the whole subbasin and what we're going to do. Demonstration and undesirable results will not occur between now and 2040 based on the climate change, by Climate Change 2030. Compare the projected hydrographs to the water level SMCs to ensure that 25% of our rest of the modern wells do not exceed the MTs. We tested this on all our represented modern sites using our modeling tools to assure that we are going to try achieve sustainability. I believe this is John. I'm going to pass this on to John Brody to finish off the presentation. I want to thank everybody for letting me provide my input.
I want to just give Vince a hand. That was a lot of stuff to cover. So if you all want to give him a virtual hand, that'd be great. Thank you. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thanks very much, Vince. That was tremendous, and I'm sure some of the folks from the public may feel like you're drinking from a fire hose right now a little bit. But essentially, these are the things that the GSAs are doing on behalf of you, the beneficial users in the subbasin, to achieve groundwater sustainability and also maintain local control of our local resources. So recognizing that they have 5 other critically overdrafted basins to evaluate, we've met as we've been able through this process with State Water Resources Control Board staff to receive input on this single GSP as it was being developed. And based on an updated schedule released about a year ago, we anticipate that board staff will schedule a probationary hearing for this subbasin in March of 2025. So between now and then, the best thing you can do as a resident of the subbasin is support your GSA's efforts to implement the plan. Now, under the law, that plan implementation is to begin upon adoption, and the single GSP is in the process of being adopted across the subbasin right now. So please stay engaged. Read the newsletter when you get it from your GSA, or if you want, you can also find it on the subbasin website. You may want to consider coming out to support your GSA during any public meetings on that draft staff report from the State Water Board, and also at the board's expected probationary hearing in March. You can sign up for more information on the website, on the subbasin website, which is one word, deltamendota.org.
That's great.
And thank you very much for your time today.
Yes, thank you. Don, if you could put that in the chat, deltamendota.org. All righty. We are going to open this up for questions. Once again, we're just very appreciative of everyone that's joined us today. I do see the chat. So there is a question about, it would be nice to know members of the public are participating in the meeting. So Suzanne, are you talking about the state board meeting, or what are you thinking?
So hi, Lisa. So this is really a great meeting, more information that is going to be helpful to me in the Drought Resiliency Task Force. But I'm just interested as a public member, how many people in this meeting are members of the public? Anybody, just kind of an idea of, you have a lot of people that are in attendance. So any members of the public?
We've had really good participation, and the members of the public in this case, because there's 23 GSAs, there are actually a lot of people that are physically part of GSAs. They're board members and things like that. So it's probably a much bigger number. I know you're in the South American subbasin, Suzanne. So it's really a different dynamic than what you might be seeing there, but we certainly have a very nice group of folks on the call. And we've had other sessions. Altogether, we've had well over 100 people involved in the various meetings, including public meetings that have been in this process. So I'm looking here. Kevin Kaufman, can I call on you? I'm surprising you. You weren't expecting that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just curious. You've been looking at what other people are doing. What is your sense of how this is going relative to what's happening in the rest of the world?
Well, I applaud John and the teams for putting this together. Had no idea you had that much difficulty. This is my first webinar for the group. But Lisa, I was involved in the Turlock subbasin,
Mhm.
and I had to back away from that because of my private industry work that I do now, building groundwater recharge projects. But I think all the basins have done a superb job, and I would add the Delta Mendota to that list.
That's great. Thanks. It's nice to have folks that have a sort of a different experience in the other sub-basins. Is there anybody else on the line? Any questions? I don't know if our translators, if they had anything they wanted to put into the chat. And so Jason Dean is asking, with the submittal of the new draft creating one GSP, does that create a chance to avoid probation, or will the hearing take place regardless? Go ahead, John Brody.
Yeah, our conversations with state board staff, the short answer is no. What state board staff has told us is they are going to put together the draft staff report on the 6 failed groundwater sustainability plans, even though we submitted this in what we thought was a timely fashion. We asked them that question specifically and directly, and they said they will not base the draft staff report on this single GSP. It's going off of the original 6. So we anticipate that means we will have a probationary hearing before the state.
Okay. Any other questions from the group? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Oh, let's see. I did get a nice thank you note from one of our participants. We did get a question. What is the critical infrastructure for subsidence purposes?
All right, well, as I think, Vince mentioned a little bit, we had the Delta Mendota Canal, the California Aqueduct, or sometimes referred to as it flows through the Delta Mendota subbasin as the San Luis Canal. We also have the Chowchilla bypass. I'm not sure if John Wiersma, you can correct me here. I think Sac Dam would be considered some critical infrastructure. And then we have, obviously there would be some bridges and some roads that are always considered critical infrastructure as well. But I think the irrigation canals are what's considered water conveyance, surface water conveyance of the Delta Mendota Canal and the state aqueduct are the 2 major infrastructure points.
Great, thank you. There's also the trigger for the so the question is, what is the trigger again for the 0.25 acre feet pumping limit? And it looks like also Scott Peterson has put a few notes about the way that the state board will move forward with the process. So John, I don't know if you can see in the chat, there's a question about the actual pumping limit and how that might result in landowners being differently depending on where their land is and where their wells are, and whether or not that was the intent. So I don't know if who you want to send that question to. That's from Nav.
Right. So I think that 0.25 acre limit is the emergency or the backstop, as we're calling it, the groundwater allocation, and that's based on where we're having some undesirable results. That would be triggered by an undesirable result, and it would be triggered by actions that we've taken to avoid those minimum thresholds. have not been successful. So that's, the emergency backup, the emergency backstop to try to make sure that we don't exacerbate any undesirable results and further minimum thresholds. So will this result in landowners being treated differently based on where their land and wells are? At the point of the groundwater allocation backup, I think that is still to be determined. Obviously, if you're in an area where there's either critical infrastructure that is at risk, or if you're in an area where water levels are dropping below the minimum thresholds, then yes, that's certainly an area. Again, as John mentioned, what happens, because this subbasin is 100 miles long, what happens in West Stanislaus Irrigation District doesn't necessarily affect what's going to happen down in the Fresno County management area. So in light of that, where you're located may have an effect on whether or not you're affected by that.
That's great. And then Nav, if you are not already familiar, drop a note that we'd be happy to get you more information about your particular GSA as well. So Thomas Callahan, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I just wanted to check in with you and see if if there were any other questions that you might have had, or we were able to take it to a place where folks that don't live with water every day were able to get the gist of what was going on here. And I know I'm surprising you as well. You're on mute. When folks are in webinars with me, they need to, they'll find out I might very well ask you a question. So, okay, I think I'm gonna see if Thomas hops in here in the next minute or two. If not, I think we can go ahead and wrap up. So, John Weirson, did you have any other last thoughts you wanted to add?
No, nothing else, I guess, to add other than thank you, everybody, for coming today. Good questions, good engagement. We appreciate it. And again, we know that your time is limited, likely jumped on your lunch break at work. So thank you very much, and look forward to more engagement.
Very good. We'll see everybody later. Thank you again.